should read topic number 5 says, what is valid? The Saharan hypothesis or the Jopian model on the origin of modern West Africans. So this takes us back to YouTube for a video. We'll watch it and then we will comment about it.
In our previous video, we broke down the many central flaws of the Saharan hypothesis using architectonic, historical, genetic, and archaeological evidence to show that the ancient Sahara cannot adequately explain the origin of the material cultures of modern Africa, namely West Africa. Today, we will delve a little deeper into some more fatal flaws of the Saharan hypothesis, and why its proponents, mainly those who traffic in West African tribalism, are unknowingly promoting white supremacy in Africana scholarship. The ancient Sahara lies at a crossroads between African civilizations and those of Eurasia. It features many genetic theoretical models such as the Great Back Migration, along with hypothetical populations such as the Basal Eurasian. Historically, numerous Western scholars have used the Sahara as a springboard to promote their Hamiticist theories that claim that white Caucasians pastoralists from West Asia descended into the Saharan zone and are responsible for African civilizations. Though the ideological descendants of these Hamiticists can vary, they are typically represented by modern Berber or Amazigh nationalists who promote the idea and concept of an indigenous white African, or an African who doesn't represent the stereotypical image of a Black person. Is there any evidence of these white Africans? Well, Cheikh Anta Diop documented the incursion of leucoderms, or those with pale skin, into Africa during the pre-dynastic Amratian culture, also called Nakata, one around 4000 to 3500 BCE. Diop made it clear that these pale immigrants did not change the bioevolutionary trajectory of the ancient Kemetic people. However, throughout classical African history, the Remenkemi often had conflict with the ancient Libyan people and sometimes depicted them with pale skin. This takes us deeper into some of the issues with the claim that the Sahara is the true cradle of African cultural unity. It opens the door for covert Hamiticists and white nationalists to steal African accomplishments and denigrate the legacy of African people. The Bovidian period is the major era of Saharan pastoralism, where we find the majority of the petroglyphs that depict the inhabitants of Tassili Niger in Algeria. According to archaeologist Andrew B. Smith, one of the major artistic styles of the Bovidian period featured people with pale skin, long hair, beards on the men, and long dresses on the women. This is similar to the depiction of some of the Timahu by the Remenkemi. Smith associates this art with so-called Proto-Berbers and cites skeletal data identifying them as Proto-Mediterraneans. When it comes to the Black faces of the Bovidian pastoral period, the conventional view is that they represent the ancestors of the Fulani people due to the many faunal rituals such as Brushgate Latori ceremony seen within Bovidian rock art that are observed today among the Fulani. However, if one considers the fact that the Fulani have a European lactase persistence gene, the fact that African pastoralism originated along the Sudano-Chadian border, and that the Fulani autosomally cluster close to the Omotic Ari people in East Africa, it is clear that the pastoral culture entered into the Western Sahara from the north and east, and that Eurasian carriers of a lactase persistence gene played a role in that process. It is clear from this data that these white Africans were a significant portion of the Saharan population during the pastoral period. The advocates of the Saharan hypothesis, who claim that Saharan pastoralists represent the historical cultural cradle of modern Africa, and that these Saharan pastoralists are the primary ancestors of ancient Kemet and modern West and Central Africans, they are saying that white Africans are the initiators of African civilization. That brings us to Tichet. There has been a lot of controversy, namely by the advocates of West African tribalism, about who founded the ancient Tichet culture. The reason why this is controversial is because these West African tribalists want to connect with the Wagadu civilization that is also known as Ghana. Even though there has never been an identifiable operation sequence that connects Tichet prototypes with ancient Wagadu and the overwhelming majority of Soninke artifacts with respect to regalia, systematic theology, literature, and armaments have prototypes from the pharaonic civilization. The advocates of West African tribalism foolishly choose to promote the outdated tradition of isolationism with respect to the development of West African civilizations and cultures. They claim that the founders of the Tichit culture were Proto-Mandi speakers. This is hilarious when one considers that Tichit is a Berber toponym. If Tichit was created by Proto-Mande people, why don't we have a Mande term for that culture? Furthermore, according to Kevin McDonald, the Hod Depression that houses Tichit was filled with lakes during the Holocene optimum 9,500 to 5,500 years ago and only began to dry up 6,000 years ago before accepting incoming so-called Niger-Congo speakers 4,000 years ago. The exact point when the aforementioned Mande speakers would have entered into West Africa. It is clear from the material record alone that trying to connect so-called Proto-Mande people with Tichit in the absence of historical comparative linguistic reconstruction is immature. Kevin McDonald also cites research compiled by Patrick Munson, who has provided evidence for the invasion and defeat of the local Tichit culture by North African Berbers during the late period. This was supplemented by intensive cultural syncretization, which would affirm that North African Amazi played a primary role in the last vestiges of Tichit. If we are to accept a continuity between Tichit and Ouagadougou, even though there is virtually no archaeological evidence confirming this continuity was established by these so-called white Africans. This is yet another major L for the proponents of the Saharan hypothesis as it concerns West Africa, and another win for the racist white nationalists promoting Berber nationalists. As usual, comparative Africana studies will save the day. If we consider the material culture research of Kevin McDonald that affirms that the pre-Tichit Akrijit culture was dominated by hunter-gatherers. According to Lipson's genome-wide analysis of foragers in Cameroon, these ancient West African hunter-gatherers would be descendants and derives from the Shumlaka culture. They combined incoming pastoral technologies from northern and eastern Africa with their local foraging practices, and in turn developed a complex society over time. The Binford-Myers model states that both incoming pastoral traditions and local hunter-gatherer strategies played a role in the onset of agricultural production in Tichit. Musa Lam, in his analysis of Soninke oral traditions, along with a comparative archaeological study of the area during the Chebka period and the terminal Akinjeyer period, confirms that the Soninke people, who were masters of Equus ferus caballus, which is a species first domesticated in ancient Kimi, migrated into the Mauritania area and defeated the indigenous Kokoro people, who they identified as the founders of the culture now called Tichit. They represented one of many populations of Africans who migrated from the Hapi River Valley in East Africa into West Africa. Historically, whether we are dealing with the early Stone Age, Middle Stone Age, Late Stone Age, African Humid period, etc., it was Hapi River that helped populate the cultures and civilizations of the ancient Sahara, and not the other way around. The Sahara cannot be the cradle of African cultural unity because it does not have enough explanatory value to articulate the true origin and purpose of the material cultures of contemporary Africa. Despite the uproar of West African tribalist neophytes, it has been repeatedly affirmed both here and throughout the Africana academic, social, and cultural universe that the Hapi River Valley continuum is the culture cradle of African unity. Without it, there are no evolutionary roots of modern African societies. For those who advocate tribalism and the eternal ethnic separation of Eastern and Western Africans, these facts are a nightmare. However, for those who are the advocates of Pan-African unity, the truth presented here will be liberating.
Yes, indeed. So that's another Candraverse video. You see the prompt. It says, "What is valid, the Saharan hypothesis or the Diopian model on the origin of modern West Africans?" So this is another opportunity for us to learn something that we probably don't study enough. In the chat, KW7, I had to shout this one out. He says the term white African, it's oxymoronic. Sugar Happy 262 plus seems to agree. He says, yep, That's why it makes no sense that the Green Sahara is the cultural cradle of African people. Um, with all of that said, let me start with Brother Bakari. Bakari, what are your thoughts on what you just heard?
What is a white African? So if I heard right, did they say it was like white people that was were those people indigenous to there, or did they come in there? I'm trying to see if I heard correct.
Well, it depends on who you're talking to. When you hear the term white African, generally speaking, you're referring to North Africans. So that would be the Amazigh people, and in some cases, the Egyptian Arabs. So whether or not they came in, people say that these are evolutionary traits. Like I have debates with Ngozi, who I'm actually trying to bring on to this channel, and he would be one of those who say that these lighter skinned North Africans were there, since the Paleolithic times, whereas others would say that no, they're actually the product of Orientalization and migrants from Eurasia, especially if you look at lactase persistence, like the Fulani have a lactase persistence gene or a gene that allows them to digest milk, and it comes from Europeans or Eurasians. Whereas South Africa's milk digestion gene comes from East Africa, right? So there are certain pieces of evidence that you could use both ways, but generally they would be Africans who don't fit the so-called stereotypical Negro formality.
Well, okay. Well, it
I
sounds crazy to me. That sounds crazy to me. Those are the people that I call Asiatic. I know black people like to say they're Asiatic, but those are the people that I call Asiatic. Those white people that came into Africa because they came into, as you call Eurasia now, but they came into Asia from Europe, and those were the people that was originally called Asiatics. Black people took on somebody else saying they Asiatics, but that's a whole nother thing. But that's why that's why I got confused that when they started talking about the white Africans, and I thought they said they were from around like sub-Saharan Africa, and that's why I got confused. That so I'm gonna have to let y'all talk because dude just explained something to me that I didn't know.
I love the fact that Brother Bakari is here. Brother Bakari, where Mike Tyson from again?
You say Mike Tyson?
Yeah, Mike Tyson. Where he from
Mike Tyson?
in New York? Where's he from?
Brooklyn.
Which part? Which part? Oh, what's the name of it? What's the name of it? Okay, no problem. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So this is a teachable moment. So KMG verse. Explain to me, like a brother who's like Mike Tyson from Brooklyn, what I just heard from the sister who was speaking just now. Break it down for me like that. Break it down for me from a brother who was trying to understand where you coming from, and I'm from Brooklyn, from Bed-Stuy or wherever Mike Tyson from. Break down that information for me, what she just explained just now, please.
Well, basically, what the shorty was saying. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so people online, they say West Africa has nothing to do with ancient Kemet, right? So their retort is West Africans come from the Sahara. After the Sahara dried up, the populations there migrated down. That's the retort in defense of those who say that West Africa has nothing to do with ancient Kemet. The problem with that's called the Saharan hypothesis. The problem with that is that a good majority of the epigraphic or the painting on the wall, the representations that the people made of themselves, the way that they showed themselves, a good number of that shows people that we may define as quote unquote pale skinned or quote unquote white. Some scholars say that these are the ancestors of the Berbers. The other portion of that population, which would be more closer to quote unquote black people, they have cultures more similar to the Fulani, which a lot of West Africans describe as invaders, right? So the point of the video is to show the flaws of the idea that modern West Africans are primarily the descendants of Saharan populations who migrated down. Now, some of them are, but what the video is trying to articulate, these two videos, is that the Nile Valley was the first starting point after the drying of the Sahara. And then after the Pharaonic civilization, many of these populations migrated across the Sahel into West Africa. So if you look through the facts of the video and what it was presenting, it displays how by promoting the idea that modern West Africans are primarily the descendants of the Saharan people who migrated south after it dried up, you have to admit that Eurasians, or what you could call a white African, was a primary or significant role in that process.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I want you, I want you going forward to think, I want you going forward to think Catskills, New York, Mike Tyson, in terms of how you break down this information and explain it to your people. That is good. That is good. That's what I want. If I was to have, that is a good explanation of where we are at, and I appreciate that explanation. And I want you going forward to think Catskills, New York. Please, going
Yeah,
forward.
even Trigger Happy's point about the Kintampo complex. So Kevin McDonald, he uses the term bow wave diffusion, and basically what bow wave diffusion means is that populations from multiple points came and migrated into one point. That's what he uses to describe the development of Kintampo, which is in ancient Ghana. If I'm not mistaken, this would be about Ghana, 4 to 3,000 years ago. The problem with that is in the Kintampo civilization, you also have the Pun Pun culture. And the Pun Pun culture is part of what's called the microlithic techno complex. And microlith is basically small stone, microlith or small stone. And they basically use quartz microliths for arrows and daggers to engage within fishing, hunting, and all that stuff, et cetera, et cetera. Those tools, those small stone quartz tools are not related to the Saharan pottery and the other Saharan artifacts that we may find, in Kintampo. So these are two, divergent or separate populations. Also, if you look at some of the stone axes in Tlemcen, which is near Mali, and on the Niger or the Oya River Valley, a lot of these stone axes are derived from Darfur. They're part of the Darfurian or the neck axe culture. So to say that the Akan culture is solely from the Kintampo complex, when the Kintampo complex is mixed and consists of ancient West Africans, would be inaccurate. And also there's many evidences. I have it in my Sons of Pharaoh's video. When you look at the regalia, when you look at the formalities, even the lexical or the vocabulary terms used around the Oheni, which is what they use to define their ruler, there's many similarities with the pharaohs of the Nile River Valley. So no, the Kintampo civilization, though there are some similarities, especially if you look at the roulette ceramics, and the roulette is basically a stamping type used on potteries as a form of distinction. There is some evidence that, there was some drift from the northwest Mauritania area down into Ghana. But if you look at other ceramics, especially like, Gaji Ghana and the concave matting, that came from the east to the west. So you couldn't articulate the full totality of Akan society simply using the Kintampo culture.
I understand that. I understand. I actually understand that. Not now that you broke it down, in terms of, going, almost on the elementary level. I understand that. I could follow. I could follow that, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No problem. No problem.
Yes, yes, yes.
Let's go to Black Steel and see what he has to say.
Okay, so I'm here. So my knowledge of African prehistory is extremely limited. So I'm just sitting back and I'm soaking up all of this good knowledge. I really appreciate the knowledge I'm being given, because my educational background is in sociology. I took an anthropology class in college and I got an A, and that's it. So hearing this knowledge is very, very good. My understanding has always been that the Sahara Desert was lush and fertile in prehistory, and then as it dried up at the end of the last ice age, um, the people migrated to different parts of Africa. I never had an understanding they were white people, they were non-Africans. I understand they were always Black Africans. So just me hearing this different hypothesis is a little, shocking to me. So it's just interesting when I hear this, that Africa's greatness has to always be because of something else or what somebody else did. So just like, for example, we talked when we understood the bronzes in Benin. They keep them in the museums in Europe. When they first took these bronzes, they were originally thought to have been made by people from Atlantis, right? Because there's no way African people could construct such wonderful works of art. There's no way African people could build cities or build pyramids. It has to be some hidden source. It has to be alien. It has to be some other bullshit. So I don't really have too much to add to the conversation. I'm just really saying that whenever I hear about these so-called white white Africans who just existed, it's just another way to denigrate and to, cast doubt on the genius of African people. We were the first scientists, we were the first philosophers, the first intellectuals. We were the ones who led mankind forward. But yet, it's always impossible for us to do something like that. So I'll leave it there. My knowledge is extremely limited. I would rather, gain and soak up some of this knowledge. But I appreciate you, everyone on the channel. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Black Steel. While the historian is here, ask him any question for any question that you may have in terms of African history. While the historian is here, I say, push it to him, give him it, make him work a little bit.
Okay, all right, I will. Give me a moment. Let me think of something. Let me cook.
Thank you for that, Black Steel and Buana. Let's go to Buana. Buana, which hypothesis do you support?
For me personally, I am because I have read some of the Diop's work. I am gonna follow his model. But like I say, the historian is here, someone who has studied the material way more so than I have. He would probably have a greater perspective. But my challenge, while he is here, is to ask him questions that I may have in my mind in terms of further reading that I would want to pursue in terms of understanding this material, of where he came from, what the diasporan perspective is, Diop's perspective is, and any more information or material or content that I would possibly need to read in terms of the hypothesis, in terms of the origins of West Africans. What would I need to read and going forward?
And yeah, I would say that basically the funny thing is that the majority of information about West African populations would be published in French just because of the strength of French imperialism within Western Africa. So, being bilingual helps. But at the same time,
I read French. I read French, bro.
Oh, bien sûr, bien sûr. Parfaitement. Well, I would say that anything by Cheikh Anta Diop, anything by Hamadi Bokoum, anything by Dr. Nasir Sar, right? Anything by Lamin Baji, anything by Digi. These are some of the scholars, the post-Diopian scholars. Dr. Musa Lam. Dr. Musa Lam is an excellent scholar on the historical development of West African populations. So those guys, Nasir Sar, Musa Lam, Dika Akwa, Cheikh Anta Diop, Theophilo Benga, there's so many more, that I'm missing. But those guys, they would be excellent people to listen to. And even the European scholars, I use a lot of Western scholars simply because people accuse me of being too Afrocentric when I'm talking about Africa, because they don't think it's right to center Africa when you're speaking about Africa. So you'll catch me using Kevin McDonald, Christopher Arid at times, Roger Blanche, Supukova, at times. Sometimes I may use Huskayam, who's a French scholar. I may use Anne Maillard, who's a French scholar, and a variety of different scholars in text, just to, elucidate the point. And this is a very, very important video because it's pretty controversial. Most West African tribalists just simply go on the assumption that Ouagadougou, the Ouagadougou or the ancient Ghana civilization is immediately derived from Tchit without any archaeological evidence. And Kevin MacDonald, a European from Cambridge University, classified that assumption as linguistic speculation without any, reconstruction evidence. And, I've gotten into quite the scuffle with various people simply because, X Sparks the Mark, which, Mark, I wanted him to be on this channel because I wanted to have a discussion really, really bad. Oni's been talking to me about it. Other trolls, like there's that African world history clown, and other West African tribalist acolytes who follow them. They simply have this line of thinking without any evidence, right? And when you look at the fact that from Tchit, the last stages of Tchit, where you see the onset of pastoralism and you see the onset of the development of these complex societies, if you look at Equisferus cabilis, right, that's a horse species. That species came into West Africa from Northeast Africa, right? So that's more evidence, compiled by scholars such as Musa Lam and others, that there was an incursion into that region. And also, I would like to say is that oral history is important. Most of the oral histories of Western African civilizations articulate that they migrated from the east, right? Whether that's the Kaador or the Dogon people, whether that's the Soninke or the Sarakole people, or Galam, which is another name that's used to define them, the Wolof, the Fulani, the Akan, they all have the same scenario of coming from the Great Water. In Mande or Malinke, it's called Kurutumuba. And then in Soninke, it's called Kulumgunju, right? Kulumgunjuba, the Great Water. And that Great Water is none other than the Hapi, or the so-called Nile River. So it's pretty clear. And as you can see, none of the detractors really have much to say, even though they want to run on the idea that West Africans are, eternally separate from East Africans and Central Africans, and going back into the beginning of time, a really religious view. They don't really have anything to say. And as you can see, when I post my evidence, you never see them come around.
Oh, I thought Juan was going to ask a follow up.
No, no, man. I see, got you, bro. I can check it out, man. I can check it out. I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah. I was gonna add something there. Oh yeah. The book Fighting for Honor. Cam DeVers just touched on something there. He was able to pronounce the wording very smoothly, so I won't even attempt it. But that thing about the water being the underworld, I don't know if Black Steel remembers this, but we did a book review of that book that talked about that belief system with the waters, and
Yes, I
other
remember that. I do remember that.
yeah. Does anyone want to ask Camdyverse another question or drop another comment here? All right. In the chat, KW7 said Chief X peddles the idea that ancient Kemet wasn't black, but he's a Negro, anyways. Okay. Trigger Happy 262 says that's why I'm in the pursuit of learning French. That paper on Akan divine kingship is in connection to Kemet was really good. So I guess that's maybe something Cam G broke down. I'm not certain.
Yeah, I have it in my video, Sons of Pharaohs.
I have another question, Kamji.
Yeah.
Besides French, what is another good language that you would probably need to learn in terms of getting more perspective in terms of African? A lot of these historical references and things like that, because I know a lot of things were written in Arabic and French. But what other language would you suggest in terms of us understanding the
I would say that German is definitely
German.
very, very important. Portuguese and Spanish are important, more so probably Portuguese to deal with where the African diaspora went to South America. Kiswahili is definitely important if you want to get familiar with the Swahili coast. And actually, there's
Kiswahili.
been recent genetic evidence. If you look at EM293, descended from EV515, which is a descendant of EM35 from East Africa, it validates the connection from the Pharaonic civilization to the Swahili coast. And this has been, confirmed by Western geneticists. And if you're interested in, the Western African context, you're looking more so towards EZ18941, EL15 or EL14 and EL16, as well as EV5001. And these are basically haplogroups that went from Eastern Africa, or actually the Lake Chad Basin to Northern Africa, and then south, and southwest after the drying of the Sahara. So those would validate those. But linguistics, German, Portuguese for certain, Arabic for certain. If you want to know about the trade of, Kemetic and Nubian people to Americas during the Ma'afa, I would look at some of the Turkish sources, because in the 18th and 19th,
Turkish, that's crazy. Okay.
oh yeah, Turkish. The Turks sold quote unquote Kemetic and Nubian people to Remenkimi people to the Americas. They actually, during the 19th century, were a very pivotal part of the illegal slave trade. So many African Americans and Caribbean people actually have ancestors who came directly from Kemet and Kush or Nubia, right, during the 19th century. So Turks, Gerald Horn wrote a book about it, and he has a lot of references. That's a really important language as well. Then I would say, the popular African languages, Zulu. I'm learning a little bit of Creole, Yoruba, Kanuri, Hausa, Wolof, Igbo, Soninke. Like, you can't go wrong with any of the popular African languages.
Kamji, how many languages you speak?
Fluently or knowledgeable?
Conversational.
Conversationally, maybe about eight or nine.
Eight? That's crazy. Okay. All right. Wow, that's crazy. All right.
But they just came from my research, because I read a lot of, I used to do a lot of work in Portuguese. I took AP Spanish in high school, but I don't actually use it as much now, even though I want to. I took a Remenkimi or Coptic, so I know basic phrases there. German as well. Like, I've taken some German, obviously spoken French since a very young age. English, obviously, and I could conversate in Kiswahili. I spent some time in Zanzibar. Madumba and Shupamem being, Western Cameroonian languages. I have some articulation there. I have a lot of Yoruba friends and Igbo friends, so like I could have a conversations in those. And I also have an uncle who lives in Romania as well, so we talk sometimes.
But being bilingual is very important in terms of understanding, um, piecing together a lot of information.
Yeah,
Because
of course.
yeah, right, absolutely. Okay. That's right. That's right. Okay.
Like, if you're not, honestly, for me personally, I don't respect people who say that they're legitimate Africana researchers and they can't, engage in multiple languages. To me, there's some fraudulence, behind that.
All right. If there's no last words, then that's going to be the show tonight. I want to thank all of you who tuned in tonight, especially my panel. So let me ask them to shout something out good this week, or something they have interest in. Let's start with Black Steel. Black Steel, what would you like to shout out this week?
Nothing really to shout out tonight. I'm just caught tail end of the show. But everything was good. Shout out to all the guests and all the listeners as well. I'll see you guys next week.
Appreciate you, Black Steel. Brother Bakari, what would you like to shout out this week?
Excuse me. I plan to do. Well, I ain't plan. Do a show. Do a live tomorrow about black businesses. I see a grocery store and a couple more things I want to talk about. I got to make sure I got everything in order before I do it and set it up. But what I want to shout out is y'all shop black, spin black, be black, buy black, think black, love black. That's what we need to be doing. I'm gonna keep saying this. The Buy Black Challenge. That's what I'm shouting out. Black Steel, take your ass to Progress Village and spend your money. over there with the black folks in Progress Village. That's where you need to be at, Black Steel. But on that note,
Yo, man, I'll be
go.
out. I'll be at Private Village tomorrow, man. You know, my people stay out there. I'll be out there. Oh, Bakari, what was the name of the grocery store in Jacksonville? Because I'm actually in Jacksonville right now.
The Yellow Banana. It used to be Save-A-Lots. Now they changing them to Yellow Banana.
Okay, all right. I'm up here visiting my friends, so my lady friends. So I will swing by there tomorrow.
Yeah, it's the Yellow Banana. Yeah, they shop black. And you know what? And like this brother who was on here speaking, what's his name again?
Camji
Who was
verse.
talking about the Camu verse?
Kamji.
Kamji, is that the name of your channel? Is that the name of your channel? Kamji verse?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna find it. CAMG. How do you spell it? Okay, CAMGI verse.
KAMGI verse.
KAMGI verse. All right, I'm gonna see a brother like this I can listen to because he don't, and I can learn from him because it don't sound like he trying to don't sound like he trying to hustle and scam nobody, like the guy KW Don mentioned in the chat, who he said is that dude completely switched up what he said so he can debate and ask people for money. Egypt, now all of a sudden the Egyptians were white and everybody was right. I listened to what's his name? Doctor, he do the Egypt on the Potomac tour. Man, I can't think of his name right now. Oh my goodness.
Anthony Browder.
Who?
Anthony Browder.
Yeah, I listen to, yes, I saw a thing and I have to do more with him, find more of his stuff. Because he literally showed symbols in Egyptian pyramids and the exact same symbols and everything over in, what was it? Because he's the only black archaeologist over there doing digs, right? So he found these symbols doing digs. He was in Egypt, and then he found them over in West Africa, the exact same symbols with the exact same meaning, huh?
Ghana. The Adinkra symbols.
Yeah, oh, so you know what
the Sankofa bird. He saw the Sankofa bird, in the Nubian area, and then he basically found the same symbol in Ghana. And there's multiple different, references of that all across.
Yep, he showed a few symbols. Yep, showing the connection with West Africa and East Africa. And you got people on YouTube because they want to try to make some money. I'm going to debate him and prove he's wrong. I'm glad he didn't debate none of them clowns and give him no props. And don't even give him an opportunity to make no money off you talking about let's do a debate. Forget them, because most of them they're divisive anyway. But that's what I want to shout out right there, man. Peace and love.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So
why not?
I'll go. Camji verse just basically show and express, and expose the fact that when Marcus Garvey talking about the Universal Nigger Association is universal. He is able to speak the languages of people who look just like him, not only in the English speaking world, but in the French speaking world, because I think there's more people speak French in the black world as opposed to English. But he is able to understand that this is a principle with us. So we have to be universal people. And I understand the French is a colonial language, but we also have to understand the African languages in terms of Kiswahili and all these other all these other languages as well, because we are universal people. So we must be able to communicate and have bonds and form ties just as I am able to converse with my brother from Mississippi. I should be able to converse with my brother from any French speaking area in a black world. Unfortunately, the black brothers speak French as well in the black world because of colonialism. So we must be able to be universal. You can't just have one approach to the world, because our people have been spread out all around the diaspora. So all our brothers are tasked with the responsibility not only to be able to speak to our brothers in one form, but in all kinds of other forms. I say challenge yourself. I say challenge yourself. But I appreciate the dialogue and the conversation tonight. I appreciate you, Camdyverse, for the dialogue, and also Koku, and also Brother Bakari for the conversation tonight. But I'll leave it there.
I appreciate it. Camdyverse, don't be a stranger. Let's try to do some work together in the future. You know, you're always welcome on Shoot the Breeze. Your videos are actually played here pretty often. So you know, make sure come through again.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to. You know, when I get offered a debate, I always mention your channel because it's a channel that everybody can come on to have a discussion.
Yes, sir. All right. Again, that's the show for tonight. We'll be back here again next week. I want to thank everyone who's in the chat, everyone who participated on the panel. Yes, yes.
I want to say one last thing. You know, on the chief executive, some of these, you know, racist Berber nationalists. You know, on my channel we go over a lot of the different evidence. You know, some of that is grammatical. Kemet as a feminine singular collective adjectival noun, you know, refers to people, not the soil. And you even see that in modern African languages, like in Akan, you got Obibini, black human, right? And they refer to Africa as Abibiman, right? Or the black land. In Bambara, it's a black person. In Farafina would be the land of black people. In Kikongo of Congo, you have Ndombe, and that's black man. In Siabandombe would be Africa. In Europe, you have Adulawo, that's a black person. In Ile Adulawo, that would be Africa or the land of black people. In Wolof, you have Nitkunul, black person. And then Reu Nitkunul, the land of black people. Igbo, Ndi Isi Oji, black man. Ala Ndi Isi Oji, the land of black people. In Medumba of Western Cameroon, you have Mbunesen, black person. Then you have Chambunesen, that would be the land of black people. So you have
Camdyverse, your mic cut out.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Where did I stop?
You know, just finish your last thoughts, and so that we could wrap it up.
Yeah, so you have this from classical to contemporary times, and we've always articulated that we are black. And you know, you can go to my channel. I have videos like articulating the genetic evidence connecting ancient Africa to modern Africa. In my last video dealing with haplography and the Y full genetics tree. So, you know, hit me up on Cash App if you support the content, and I greatly appreciate all the subs to my channel. And shout out to, you know, Cuckoo and all of the different people on the panel for having a great conversation.
Thank you as well. All right. That's it for tonight. We'll be back next week. Trying to keep the show 3 hours or less. We'll be back next week. Make sure to join the Discord. Post your topics that you'd like to see discussed. Make sure to share the content. Comment in the comment section after the show is posted. Let's continue the conversations. Anyway, guys, until next time, you guys be good. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.